The airport was buzzing with the usual commotion. Announcements blaring, travelers dragging their luggage, and families huddled together before parting ways. Amid the chaos, 10-year-old Ava Parker stood alone in front of the gate counter, gripping the handle of her small purple suitcase. Her deep brown eyes darted anxiously between the gate agent and the screen overhead, which flashed Flight 237, Washington, D.C. "Excuse me, ma'am," Ava said, her voice trembling but polite. "I think I need help finding my seat. My dad booked the flight for me." The gate agent, a stern-looking woman with tightly pinned-back blonde hair, barely glanced up from her computer screen. "Where are your parents, sweetheart?" she asked in a tone that was more suspicious than concerned. "My dad is waiting for me in D.C. I'm flying alone," Ava explained. "He said my name should be on the list." She fumbled in her backpack and produced a neatly folded printout of her itinerary. The agent sighed, snatching the paper from Ava's small hands. She barely skimmed it before shaking her head. "We don't just let unaccompanied minors waltz on flights without verification." "Who even booked this ticket?" "My dad," Ava repeated, shifting uncomfortably. "He's a senator." The agent let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "A senator?" "Right." She gave Ava a long, judging look. "Listen, sweetie, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but we don't just take people at their word. Now, unless you have a real guardian here, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." "But my dad," I said, "step aside." Tears welled in Ava's eyes as she looked around, hoping someone would step in. Other passengers had started to take notice, some whispering, others looking away uncomfortably. The gate agent waved to a nearby security officer. "This child is lost. Please remove her from the boarding area until we sort this out." Ava's heart pounded as the uniformed officer approached. She wanted to protest, to tell them that her father was expecting her, that he was probably calling the airline right now. But before she could say another word, the sound of a phone ringing filled the air. The agent looked down at her screen, her face suddenly losing all color. The VIP alert flashed across her computer. And then, a name she never expected to see appeared on the caller ID. Senator William Parker. And he was calling about his daughter. The gate agent's hand trembled slightly as she stared at the name on the screen. Senator William Parker. Her throat went dry. The officer who had approached Ava hesitated, glancing at the agent for direction. "Answer it," one of the nearby staff whispered. "Now!" She swallowed hard before pressing the button. "Hello, this is Gate B17. How can where is my daughter?" The deep, commanding voice on the other end sent a shiver down her spine. There was no mistaking the authority in his tone. The agent cleared her throat, forcing a tight smile, as if that would somehow fix the situation. "Senator Parker, sir, we're just verifying what exactly?" His voice was ice cold. "That my 10-year-old daughter isn't lying about her own identity? That my staff didn't book this flight for her through proper channels? That your airline didn't receive multiple confirmations from my office?" The entire gate had gone silent. Passengers who had been pretending not to listen were now fully engaged, some recording discreetly. Ava, still standing there with tears in her eyes, blinked in confusion as the gate agent suddenly looked like she had seen a ghost. Sir, it was just protocol. My daughter has been traveling alone for years. She knows the process. What she doesn't know is why some incompetent gate agent decided to humiliate her in public instead of simply checking her credentials properly." The gate agent's face burned red. "Senator, I assure you assure me? Let me assure you of something. If my daughter is not allowed on that plane this instant, you'll be looking for a new job before your shift is even over." The gate agent flinched. The security officer, who had been ready to escort Ava away, took a cautious step back. "Sir," the agent stammered, forcing a shaky smile, "we are more than happy to accommodate Miss Parker." "You're more than happy now?" Senator Parker cut in. "Now that you know who I am, would you have done the same for someone else's daughter?" The agent opened her mouth, but no words came out. "That's what I thought," he said. "Put my daughter on the phone." Hands shaking, the agent extended the phone to Ava. The little girl hesitated before taking it. "Daddy," Sweetheart, the senator's voice softened immediately. Are you okay? Ava sniffled. They said I couldn't get on the plane. They wouldn't listen. There was a brief silence before Senator Parker spoke again, his tone dark. You listen to me, baby. You're going to walk onto that plane, sit in first class, and not a single person is going to say another word to you. Understood. Ava nodded. Okay. And when you land, I'll be right there waiting. We'll handle the rest. Ava took a deep breath. Okay, Daddy. She handed the phone back to the stunned gate agent, who hesitantly put it to her ear again. You will personally escort my daughter to her seat, and you will apologize, Senator Parker commanded. Then, expect a call from my office. We're going to have a long conversation about the kind of people you hire. The agent's face drained of color. Yes, sir. The call ended. For a moment, no one moved. Then, with a stiff, forced smile, the gate agent turned to Ava. Miss Parker, let me personally escort you to your seat. Ava lifted her chin, wiped her tears, and nodded. She wasn't just any little girl. She was Senator Parker's daughter, and she was done being underestimated. With forced politeness, the gate agent motioned toward the jet bridge. Right this way, Miss Parker. Ava hesitated, glancing at the security officer who had been ready to remove her just minutes ago. He shifted uncomfortably under the weight of her gaze. Passengers murmured, some still recording. A woman in a business suit whispered, "Good for her." As Ava adjusted her backpack and walked forward, the agent tried to regain control of the situation. She forced a smile and placed a hand lightly on Ava's shoulder. We apologize for the inconvenience, dear. Just a little misunderstanding. You know how these things can be. Ava stopped, slowly. She turned her head to look up at the woman, her brown eyes filled with something far beyond her 10 years. No, she said, her voice steady. I don't know how these things can be. The agent swallowed hard. Passengers exchanged glances. A man muttered, "She's got more dignity than half this airport staff." Ava walked on, unbothered by the agent's flustered expression. The security officer cleared his throat. Miss Parker, can I carry your bag for you?" She shook her head. "I've got it." Another passenger clapped softly. A few others joined in. The gate agent's face burned. The airline staff at the entrance of the plane greeted Ava with overly enthusiastic smiles, clearly briefed on who she was now. "Welcome aboard, Miss Parker." Ava gave him a small nod, but didn't stop. She reached her seat. 1A. First class. The best seat on the plane. A flight attendant crouched beside her. "Would you like something to drink before takeoff, sweetie?" Ava thought for a moment. Then, with perfect composure, she said, "Hot chocolate, please." The attendant smiled. "Coming right up." As Ava settled in, she glanced out the window. The gate agent was still standing by the jet bridge, looking pale and shaken. Ava smiled slightly to herself. She wasn't just any little girl. She was a Parker, and people would remember that. As the plane began taxiing down the runway, Senator Parker sat across the aisle from Ava, still watching her carefully. She was quiet, stirring her hot chocolate with slow, deliberate motions. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Ava nodded. "Yeah." The senator leaned in. "You handled yourself well back there." She met his gaze. "So did you." He smiled, but there was a certain sharpness in his eyes. The matter wasn't over, not by a long shot. Pulling out his phone, he typed a message to his chief of staff. "Give me the CEO of this airline. We need to talk. Now." Ava watched as he hit send. "What are you going to do?" Senator Parker sighed, placing his phone down. "Make sure this doesn't happen again. Not to you. Not to anyone else's child." Ava sat back in her seat, staring at the clouds outside the window. "Good." Her father reached over, gently squeezing her hand. "I love you, kid." "I know," she whispered, as the plane ascended into the sky. Thousands of miles away, phones were buzzing, emails were being sent, and damage control meetings were being scheduled. Because one thing was certain, this airline had just made an enemy out of the wrong man. By the time Senator Parker and Ava landed at their destination, the internet was on fire. The video of the gate agent dismissing Ava had gone viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. News outlets had already picked up the story, and hashtags like #JusticeForAva and #airline discrimination were trending worldwide. As they stepped off the plane, a flood of reporters and cameras swarmed them. Senator Parker, can you comment on the incident at the airport? Do you plan on taking legal action? Is it true that the airline has issued a public apology? Ava tightened her grip on her father's hand. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. Senator Parker, however, was in his element. He raised a hand, signaling for silence. I will be making a formal statement later today, he said firmly. But let me be clear, no child should ever be treated the way my daughter was. This isn't just about Ava. This is about every young black girl who's ever been told she doesn't belong. The crowd erupted with more questions, but the senator led Ava through them, shielding her from the chaos. As they entered their car, his phone buzzed. His chief of staff's name flashed on the screen. Talk to me, the senator said, answering. Sir, the airline CEO is requesting an urgent meeting. They're offering a full public apology and want to work things out privately. Senator Parker let out a cold chuckle. Oh, now they want to talk. Ava looked up at him. What are you going to do? He smiled. Something they won't forget. Senator Parker arrived at the airline's headquarters, where the company's CEO, Richard Coleman, was already waiting in a glass-walled conference room. A team of lawyers and PR representatives sat beside him, their faces tense. As Parker walked in, Coleman immediately extended a hand. Senator Parker, I want to personally apologize for what happened to your daughter. This was an unacceptable situation. Parker didn't take the handshake. Instead, he sat down across from Coleman, folding his hands on the table. His expression was unreadable. I assume you've seen the video, Parker said, his voice even. Coleman nodded. Yes, and we are deeply embarrassed by the behavior of our employee. The gate agent has been placed on immediate leave, pending an internal investigation. Parker leaned back in his chair. You mean she hasn't been fired yet? Coleman shifted uncomfortably. We have protocols to follow, but rest assured, we are taking this matter very seriously. Parker studied him. This isn't just about one employee. Your entire system allows things like this to happen. Do you know how many similar complaints your airline has received over the past year? The CEO hesitated before nodding. There have been some cases. Some. Parker pulled out a file and slid it across the table. These are documented incidents of racial discrimination from your staff within the last 12 months. Most of them never made it to the news, but I have the records. How many more people have been quietly turned away, humiliated, or mistreated without a camera to capture it? Coleman looked pale as he flipped through the file. His legal team exchanged nervous glances. Parker leaned forward. Let me be clear. A simple apology won't cut it. I want real policy changes. Diversity training isn't enough. You need a complete overhaul of how your staff is trained to handle passengers of all backgrounds. Coleman swallowed. We're willing to make changes. We're prepared to issue a public statement, offer your family compensation, and donate to a civil rights organization of your choice. Parker smirked. You think throwing money at this will make it go away? He shook his head. No, Richard. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to implement strict, new anti-discrimination policies, make diversity hiring a top priority, and publicly commit to change. And I will be personally overseeing it. Coleman nodded quickly. Yes, of course. We'll cooperate fully. Parker stood up. Then expect a formal proposal from my office within the week. You're either part of the solution, or you'll become an example of what happens when corporations ignore discrimination. As he walked out of the conference room, his phone buzzed again. It was another news outlet requesting an interview. He smiled. This wasn't over yet. Within hours of the meeting, news of the incident had gone viral. Social media exploded with outrage, with hashtags like #JusticeForMaya, #AirlineDiscrimination, and #SenatorParkerSpeaks trending worldwide. Celebrities, activists, and politicians weighed in, demanding accountability. Major news networks picked up the story, replaying the footage of Maya being turned away at the gate. The video of Senator Parker confronting the gate agent and later the airline executives only fueled the fire. Talk show hosts dissected the event. Protesters gathered outside the airline's headquarters, holding signs that read, "Treat every passenger with dignity," and "We all deserve to fly." Meanwhile, Maya, still shaken by the ordeal, found herself at the center of a national conversation. Interview requests flooded in, but Parker shielded her from the media storm, ensuring she had time to process everything. That didn't stop her from making a statement of her OW in a heartfelt video posted to her social media. Maya addressed the situation. "I wasn't turned away because I was lost. I was turned away because someone assumed I didn't belong. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has ever been made to feel like they don't deserve a seat at the table, or in this case, a seat on a plane." Her words struck a chord, gaining millions of views overnight. People of all ages and backgrounds share their own stories of discrimination, turning the conversation into a larger movement. The airline's response? A hastily arranged press conference. Richard Coleman stood at the podium, flanked by his executive team. Cameras flashed as reporters fired questions at him. He raised his hands to quiet the crowd before speaking. "We acknowledge that what happened to Miss Parker was unacceptable. We have taken immediate action, placing the employee involved on indefinite leave, and we are implementing new mandatory training programs for all staff to prevent this from happening again." But it wasn't enough. Reporters pressed harder. Will the gate agent be fired? Why did it take national outrage for you to act? Senator Parker demanded systemic changes. Are you prepared to follow through? Coleman hesitated. He knew the airline was walking on thin ice. "We are committed to making long-term changes. That's why we're working directly with Senator Parker's office to develop new anti-discrimination policies, which will be made public in the coming weeks." Still, the response felt hollow. It was clear to everyone watching that the airline wasn't just apologizing. It was scrambling to contain a PR disaster. That's when Senator Parker took the stage. "I appreciate the airline's response, but let's be real," Parker said, his voice strong and unwavering. "This isn't just about my daughter. It's about every person who has ever been treated differently because of the color of their skin, their gender, their background. Change isn't about damage control. It's about doing what's right every single day." The room fell silent. Parker continued, "I will be personally overseeing the airline's new policies, and I won't stop until real change happens." With that, he walked off the stage. The message was clear. This was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the airline faced intense scrutiny. The gate agent, identified as Lisa Dunham, was eventually terminated after an internal investigation. But the pressure didn't stop there. Airlines across the country began reevaluating their own policies, with some rolling out new diversity and sensitivity training programs. Civil rights organizations used the incident as a catalyst to push for stronger anti-discrimination laws in public spaces. As for Maya, she became an unexpected advocate for change. Inspired by the overwhelming support she received, she launched a campaign aimed at educating young travelers about their rights. She partnered with legal experts to create a guide on what to do if you face discrimination while traveling. One evening, as she sat at the dinner table with her father, she looked up and smiled. "Dad," she said, "I think I found my cause." Senator Parker grinned, pride shining in his eyes. "Then let's make sure they hear us." And with that, a movement was born.